Essentially, what all these stories reveal is what we've always known, that even across the life-death divide, love does not waver. You remain connected. Now, the reality is most people think you remain connected because you're always thinking about the person that you lost. You're deeply saddened. But what all of these people have realized is that they are literally connected to the person that they lost because of the bond of love. And they might not be able to see them, but that they're there. They know, they sense their presence. They have experienced signs. They have, had experiences in general that have led them to believe that there'll always be some sort of connection with that person.
So what happened on 9/11? How did he leave you in the morning, for instance?
Well, that was also, it was also very sort of startling because many months prior to 9/11, my husband had also been in the 1993 bombing and had come down 105 flights of stairs in the thick smoke and had some issues with, just breathing out smoke for quite a while. He had just some health issues as a result. Nothing serious, but there was a point where he developed a vertigo problem. And I think it had something to do with that experience because it was not too long afterwards where one night he just had the room was spinning, and some people call it, physicians know it as called Meniere's disease, and it's really a label for symptoms. So he had this difficulty trying to orient himself to the room and literally was crawling on the floor, feeling sick to his stomach. Well, anyway, he had another attack a few months later like that, and then periodically he would get these dizzy attacks, and he sort of nicknamed them the whirlies, and it was very difficult for him when he had this problem. But he hadn't had an attack for over 9 months. And the morning of 9/11, he got up like he usually did at 5 o'clock in the morning because he always took an early train. And he got into the shower, and I heard the water, and then all of a sudden, I heard him turn the water off, and he yelled out, "Oh my God, I've got the whirlies." And I said to him, "Well, don't go in." Because we had this routine where he got up and got dressed, and then he went, and then I would get dressed and go to work. And so he came out, and he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Just don't go in. Just call and just, relax." And he thought about it, and then he thought that, yes, he could go in, and that's sort of the rest of the story. But I wonder, what was that? Was that another message? Was that another clue or something, some force trying to keep him from going? I don't know. But it was extremely unusual for him to have this. So it's a manifestation and a symptom of the stress he was feeling that he would suddenly have this attack. And the stress goes back to this sentiment about, these thoughts, related to potentially not being alive much longer.
Yeah. Was that the last time you heard from him, or?
It was just a bizarre, surreal morning because I was a little bit late going in, and I was driving my car and on the highway, and I thought, okay, I'm going to call my assistant and just tell her I'm going to be a little late. And she got on the phone and she said, "Bonnie, Eamon just called." I didn't have the radio on, which was unusual. She said, "Bonnie, Eamon just called, and he said a plane has hit the Trade Center, but it's a small plane. Don't worry. He's on his way out. He just wanted you to know that he loves you and loves the children." So he tried to reach me, but we didn't connect. And at that point, I turned the radio on, and as the story unfolded, the way I describe it is, I think I was driving 100 miles an hour down the highway. And when I finally got to my office, it was as if I threw my car because I left the door open. I just ran up to the third floor where my office was located. And by then, people had a television out and it was widely known what had happened, that, there was a large plane, and actually a second plane came. But it was the North Tower that was hit first by the American jet, and he was in the North Tower on the 105th floor.
And there were some time where you didn't know if he was alive or not. And I remember reading in the book that you had a lot of people at your house, I think, or you were at a place, and then you screamed out for a sign.
Yeah. I think you never want to give up hope when something tragic happens in your family. I think in my heart, I knew probably that something horrible had occurred, and whatever, but you didn't want to believe that. So I left work with a couple of friends. I came home. Already family was starting to arrive. My friends, Eamon's friends, were coming to the house. And we spent the day just trying to get answers. And a couple of friends from the city said, it doesn't look too good, whatever. But the next morning I got up really early, and, it was just beginning to be light outside. And I went out to the front yard, and since we're here in my house now, you can see. And it was one of those days where it was extremely still. There was not a ripple of wind, not a breeze. And I just yelled out, Eamon, please tell us where you are, because we had been trying the entire day to find out. We hadn't heard anything from him or any of his friends. And, maybe a couple of seconds passed, and all of a sudden, one of the trees way down on the left of my driveway started to sway back and forth. And I looked up, and, these little squirrels, we have these little animals. I thought maybe it was a bunch of squirrels running around in the tree. And then I saw that it was almost like a river of wind that came and swirled around some of the other trees, and it came across the grass. It was almost had borders to it. You could almost see it like some sort of a science fiction movie where they create this effect. And the way I describe it, I was wearing a skirt, and it sort of whimsically played with my skirt and then stopped. I tell you, I have never had an experience like that before. And I guess I viewed that as the answer to the question,
And I think it was another powerful story when you went with a bird.
Yes. In February of 2002, I had been sort of coincidentally at a 9/11 related meeting in a nearby town. And it was a very cold day. It was ice and snow and whatever, very, very cold, sharp wind blowing. And we were in this little meeting. There were only a few of us in an office, and there was a knock at the door, and it was my pastor from the church I belong to, and the head of our police force. And they told me, you see that and you think, oh my God, what's happened? And they said they had found my husband's remains. And the whole 9/11 experience for most people was very unusual when it came to that, because very few people were found early on. I mean, this was something that in many cases took years and years to really get remains, and some people never did. So, it's a different kind of experience for you. So I left, and the minister was driving me, and he, we were back in the town, and he turned very sharply into this driveway, and I realized it was the driveway into the one major cemetery we have in our town. And he said to me, you've got to start thinking about this now, and I was just sort of in a daze. But right at that moment, and I described the conditions, the weather conditions, this huge bird came out of nowhere and landed in front of our car. And it was what's called a great blue heron, which typically are in warmer climates. You can find them up and down the eastern seaboard of the U.S., but this was very unusual for this huge bird to be in a cemetery in the middle of winter in this kind of environment. And the reason it was also so unusual is because it was the one bird that my husband, my father, and I had a connection with. My parents had a home in Florida, and there was one of these blue herons that used to be out there every morning, and my father had kind of a friendship with it. And one Christmas, my husband bought him a big glass replica of the blue heron. So for me, it was a sign, I guess. And that's the thing, different things happen to different people. It's how you interpret them. Yeah. And many people have signs, but they don't realize that's what they are.
To watch the full video, click the link below, and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel.
Resto maliata.